Chuck perked up and leaned forward. Any idea how that job is going? Sorry, Mr. Clifton. That information relates to our CI investigation and is close hold. I'm sure you understand. Dunn looked at his watch. Well, I've got another appointment. Thank you for coming by to chat. Chuck bit his lip, as if he wanted the conversation to continue, but he took the cue and walked back to his vault.
"30 days later. The new setup in my room at the KURMI compound expanded my reach. Still hemmed in, still secluded upstairs, but I now had 3 computer screens as my digital windows to the world. The KURMI family had secured the hardware over the previous few weeks, all purchased through their RZQ tokens. In that uncertain time, Nigerians were focused on the bare essentials: food, shelter, petrol. People were selling old computers, old phones, and all types of gadgets for the necessities of food, drink, and clothing. Turned out that the RZQ token, falling outside the government's focus on illegal dollar use, had found a niche of users on the KANO street. With the Mansa Protocol app, you could hold RZQ, send it, and receive it with ease. Merchants were the first to warm up to it. A store of value, a medium of exchange, and a unit of account that fulfilled the qualities of money no longer possessed by the Naira. The government was pushing Naira for the nation, but with little success. The local economy, however, was starting to buzz in KANO through my digital token game that anyone could download. It was like seeing the dead come back to life. It made me think of the streets of Detroit. My family had seen that boom. And the bust. I left at the city's worst point. My siblings were stuck. My brother Jabril had to check the felon box whenever he applied for a job. My sister Jamila had little luck as a businesswoman. I started to think about them and my parents more as I spent time with the KURMI family, who took me in almost like an adopted son. While KANO was my refuge, the KURMIs seemed to know that my ability to counter what was happening in Nigeria hinged on getting me out of the country. Their protection was purely personal, but it also provided a strategic edge. From each of my 3 screens, I could monitor the video feeds of my assets in the field. Those assets: Abdullah, Hadi, and Hidayah. We assumed that Nigeria's security forces were searching for me. To find a safe passage out of KANO and out of Nigeria, we needed to survey the environment. We focused on surveilling both KANO and ABUJA to figure out an escape plan. Screen 1 was Hadi's point of view, literally. As soon as he turned a small screw hidden in the temple tip of his eyeglasses, a pin-sized camera located in the bridge of his spectacles was activated. The functionality was a product of old cell phone parts. Soon, screen 1 turned on. The feed was live. Weirdly, the display centered on another screen in a cubicle.
"Are you there, Jabbari?"
Hadi whispered. The point of view lowered. I saw a desk and Hadi's 2 hands spreading from the bottom corners of my screen. "Yes, Hadi, I'm here. What's your 20? My voice fed through a small receptor into a camouflaged brown earpiece that he wore.
KANO South, the Sun Master Internet Cafe. I have uploaded the update to the protocol. The new smart contract should be ready."
Fabulous, Hadi. Now don't hang around too much, minimize eye contact with anyone, and let me view your journey back to the house. We need to review potential escape route number 2.
Copy that. Over.
From there, I scoped Hadi's vantage point. He walked up to the front of the cafe where a stout, middle-aged cafe manager was reading a newspaper.
"I'd like to pay for my time. It was only 15 minutes. Computer 6. "Let me look at the logbook to check,"
the manager said, opening up a dog-eared composition book where patrons signed in by hand. He ran his finger down the inner spine of the most recent sign-in.
Number 6. Ahmed Badawa?
The manager saw the signature bearing Hadi's pseudonym for the day.
"Okay, yes, I see Ahmed. 15 minutes. But we don't take Naira here. We only take RZQ. That's okay. I use the Mansa protocol." "Ah, good. That will be 0.25 RZQ.
The manager pulled out his phone, swiped the screen with his thumbs a few times, and then held out the device. The screen showed a QR code. Underneath the digitized Rorschach-like design, it read 0.25 RZQ, simple business spend, small enterprise. Hadi took out his phone, swiped and clicked and pointed his device at the manager's. It scanned the code and pushed a prompt to Hadi's phone screen reading, authorized transaction? Then, Hadi placed his thumbprint on his keypad, authorizing his private key to unlock his RZQ wallet and send the digital asset to the wallet on the manager's device. Both devices signaled, transaction complete, and flashed their new respective RZQ balances. Hadi's app showed an additional message, AJR increase plus 1.25. Hadi walked out, and as soon as he turned out of the cafe, a young man about Hadi's age appeared right in front of him. His clothes were dirty and worn. His faded red long-sleeve shirt frayed at the collar. His eyes were yellow and empty.
Naira, please?
The youth said, holding out his hand cup-like. Hadi recognized him. It was one of the Lucky Time boys, the youth who were addicted to the gambling machines. Those machines which only took Naira bills.
Sorry, I have no Naira.
Hadi said, averting eye contact, walking by, trying to minimize engagement. The vagrant youth kept up with him, his arms stiffly at a 90-degree angle, palm up.
Naira, please?
The boy said again. As Hadi walked faster, the boy quickened his pace, begging for Naira on repeat. It's all right, Hadi, I said, transmitting in his ear. Keep going, ignore. I could see the boy's hand still at the side of the screen. Then, to my dismay, Hadi's motion stopped. He turned to the Lucky Time boy. On screen, I could see the vagrant from the torso up, eyes squinting, face grimacing as if he was in pain, but it was difficult to see if it was fake or real. Hadi, no, keep moving, don't stop, don't.
Let me tell you.
Hadi began.
You are throwing your life away like this. Do not waste your time and money. I have seen you months ago at the restaurant. What has it earned you if you are now here begging for Naira?
I put my face in my palms and then looked up at the screen. The boy softened his grimace, as if the words unlocked something in his brain. His yellow eyes widened as if he was beginning to see out of a fog. Something was registering. Then he said,
Please, Naira?
I could tell Hadi was losing his patience.
I don't have any Naira. Almost no one is using Naira in KANO. Stay away from those machines. I tell you, they will bleed you all.
In apparent frustration, Hadi began walking away.
But how do you have no Naira?
The young vagrant pondered aloud. He paused, squinted as if retrieving a memory, and said,
I remember. Where is the American?
But then he shook his head, as if shrugging off a dream, and went back into a trance, walking away. In fading tones, he continued to himself.
No Naira, no peace. No Naira, no peace.
Hadi shook his head, moved along, and hopped onto a bus near the central mosque. The bus pulled up and picked him up along with a few other passengers. From Hadi's view, I could see the bus window as it pulled away. The street was lined with KANO's markets. At one point, the video showed the KANO hospital. Across its front wall, graffiti spray paint read, Banaira Bazaiman Lafia, Hausa for no Naira, no peace. Then, back in my room, the middle monitor went from blank to gray static. The audio crackled.
Jabbari, do you read me?
It was Abdullah. The video stabilized. I could see the car dashboard and steering wheel, Abdullah's hands at 10 and 2, and the windshield showing a major throughway. The vantage point came from the pint-sized camera I had implanted in one of Abdullah's white kufis, which always hugged his scalp. "Abdullah, what's your 20?" I asked, my audio transmitting into his earpiece.
Central Abuja. I'm heading from the airport so we can map the route from here to the diplomatic drive. I will stop there to find a passenger to pick up.
Copy that, Abdullah. I'll follow along live. And remind me when you get back to have a chat about your son's ability to follow directions.
Welcome to my world, Jabbari.
As Abdullah drove, I fixated on the monitor feed, noting the environment as Abdullah's taxi careened through the capital of Abuja, over 200 miles away from KANO. Driving by government buildings, hotels, conference centers, stately churches, and mosques, the view reminded me of the potential of Africa's largest economy, still in shambles by man-made circumstances. I recognized Sani Abacha Way, but what I watched for mostly was the pattern of life. It was the center of Abuja in the mid-morning on a weekday. I carefully noted the volume of pedestrians crossing intersections, the level of traffic, the areas with road work being done, and whether such work would impact a potential speed chase if I were to find myself in such a predicament again. Abdullah knew Abuja like the back of his hand, and alone in the car could answer my questions about what was what.
Here is where our little incident began with the SUVs.
"Oh, you mean my Nigerian welcoming committee?" I chuckled. But then I spied something unusual. "Wait, Abdullah, was that the U.S. Embassy? Could you circle back around?" Abdullah made a U-turn and pointed his face at the large building, more slowly this time. I was shocked at what I saw, or rather, what I didn't see. "Do you notice that, Abdullah?"
What is it?
There are no Marines in front of the U.S. Embassy. In fact, no guards at all. The embassy is not only empty, that's a sign that it's abandoned.
So much for diplomatic relations with America.
Abdullah kept driving, past the other embassies which were all staffed as normal. Several minutes later, he slowed down.
Let me stop here. Someone is waving me down at the Taipei Trade Office.
A tall man, Asian, wearing a crisp suit and carrying a suitcase, leaned towards the car.
I need to go to EKOI International, but I don't have Naira. Do you take RZQ?
My ears perked up.
Yes, I do. I have the app. Please hop in.
The man settled in the car and told Abdullah he needed to get to the airport in 40 minutes.
I'll get you there with time to spare, inshallah.
Abdullah drove off, and after a few minutes of letting the man settle in, Abdullah did what I hoped he would. I didn't need to prompt him. He was skilled as a taxi driver, conversationalist. He knew how to converse and elicit information. He began his inquiry with small talk, but asking questions that would lead to information, no matter how someone answered.
So, will you be returning to Nigeria soon, or going for good? Oh, this is it for me. I'm going back to Taipei, back to Taiwan. Probably for good. Oh, what is the matter? Do you not like Nigeria? Oh yes, I like this country very much, but, well, it is difficult to work now with the economy. May I ask what type of business do you do? Well, I'm the trade representative to Nigeria from Taiwan. And well, trade is very difficult now. And well, with the Naira where it is impossible for our business partners here to purchase the foreign exchange needed to purchase from Taiwan. It is a crisis I have never seen. Yes, this economy.
Abdullah shook his head vigorously.
And the political situation, how do you find it? Oh, no. I stay away from politics. Taiwan is not even recognized as a sovereign nation by your government. All I can say is there are powers that make it very difficult. I think I was told about an African proverb. When the elephants fight, the grass suffers. Whew.
The man shrugged, seeming to not want to elaborate.
So, what do you think about this RZQ, this digital currency? I thought it was a game, right? Oh, yes, what a help it has been. A month ago, before they left the country, my kids downloaded that Mansa protocol. They were attending school here in Abuja. I thought it also was just a game. But when the US dollar was banned, it turned out to be a lifesaver. All the merchants started to ask us to pay in RZQs. You know what I love about it? It makes it fun to spend my funds. It makes me want to spend for good. I like the ABUJA more than the risk. I'm wondering if I can use it in Taiwan. Yes, my kids did the same. Where do you think it came from, this Mansa protocol? No one knows. Maybe a Nigerian prince, and the joke is on us?
The Taiwan trade representative quipped. Both men laughed. Soon, they arrived at the airport. Abdullah turned to his passenger. They pulled out their phones, outstretched and nearly touched. After the transaction went through, Abdullah's Mansa Protocol app read plus 5.0034 RZQ, the inverse amount deducted from the trade rep's wallet, who also had a small increase in his AJR. The Taiwanese man walked into the terminal. Abdullah started to drive off.
Well, Jabbari, congratulations. The Mansa protocol may soon be international.
Well, that's well and good. But while you were talking, I think I noticed something as you drove up to the airport.
What is it?
Let me see if I can pull it up in the video recording. Give me a sec. I pressed rewind to the point right where the windshield perspective displayed the main terminal entrance. I pressed pause. I noticed a figure. A large man, a dark man in a dark suit, carrying two mid-sized duffel bags, one in each hand. I zoomed in, pressed play. The man walked through the doors, and before they closed behind him, he turned to his left, almost as if he felt he was being watched. I pressed pause again, zoomed in 2x, then 3x, then 5x. I studied his build and his face. It hit me. I slumped back into my chair. I don't believe it.
What? What is it?
That's George EKOI entering the airport.
Do you think he saw me?
No idea, but I think we should abort the rest of today's mission.
Roger that, Jabbari. Abdullah out.
As soon as Abdullah signed off, my third monitor started crackling. The screen activated. I saw what looked like an audience from the vantage point of a stage. The picture panned to the right, stopping on a banner that read, KANO Secondary School's Science Fair. I was reminded that today was HIDAYAH's big event. She said nothing on camera, but she obviously wanted me to take everything in. All right, HIDAYAH, I said, switching gears and giving my full attention to her screen. I'm registering. I have your visual. Point towards whatever you want me to notice. Her camera, well placed at the front of her headscarf, turned behind her to a row of chairs on the stage, clearly reserved for VIPs. There were several men and a few women, all official looking. My time in KANO was paying dividends as I recognized some, such as the head of education for KANO State, the deputy director of the Nigerian police forces, and someone else who I found very interesting, a Nigerian Ministry of Agriculture official who dealt with the North, General Rashid El-SAYF, a retired army officer known for his operations against Boko Haram. He had many successes while in the military, but now that he was off the battlefield and had returned to civilian life as a farmer, Boko Haram had been taking more and more land in the northeast. From the speaker system, a woman's voice announced,
And for the final prize, this year's first place award for the KANO Secondary School Science Competition goes to Miss HIDAYAH KURMI.
The crowd applauded. The picture began moving to the front of the stage. I saw HIDAYAH's outstretched arms approach the woman at the standing microphone. She held a huge trophy. HIDAYAH accepted it and turned toward the audience. The woman continued speaking.
Hidayah's project was a study on the impact of hibiscus flower on lowering blood pressure. Through her study, she was able to show how the plant improved the health of a sample of patients with high blood pressure. This young woman has been blessed with great intelligence. I'm sure that, God willing, one day she will be the Chief Surgeon General of Nigeria. Let us congratulate this model daughter of KANO.
Further applause, and this time with much of the audience standing. This was a proud moment, a nice reprieve from the stress and drama we had all been facing. I was happy for her. She then was escorted to the VIP row, and first to General SAYF. I saw his eager and smiling face fill up the camera. Hidayah and the general turned toward the audience, posing. A camera flashed. Then I saw the general's face in the monitor as he leaned closer to Hidayah.
Ms. KURMI, congratulations on this great achievement.
General SAYF smiled impishly.
Your work is very important to the nation. Please remember that. Yes, thank you, sir.
But before Hidayah could say any more, the woman at the microphone interrupted.
And in addition to her trophy, Ms. KURMI will be awarded a prize of 100,000 naira.
Most of the crowd looked at each other, perplexed. But all the government officials applauded with enthusiasm. "Oh, look, Hidayah," I said in her earpiece. "An award for ants." Hidayah laughed, catching my comedic reference to the movie Zoolander, which I forced the family to watch in the early days of my hiding with them. She played it off, though, as if she was simply surprised and thankful, nodding her head, then looking over at General SAYF, who stared intently, applauding and smiling, looking at her with great interest.
Days later, in the small town of Maysville, North Carolina. At a supermarket in the middle of town, Safia Lincoln's stress level was at a 9. Her first shift was over, and she had only a quick break before she needed to start the next shift, which she was doing because one of the other cashiers had called in sick. The manager didn't force her to do it, but she needed the overtime. She was in the store's break room, where she found her regular corner where she made prayer while at the job. She took the 10 minutes, performed the ritual, and made a supplication, softly asking for divine assistance and for a strong will for greater perseverance. Her stress subsided a bit as her heartbeat slowed slightly, but she had to return to aisle 4. As she got up, Chantel from the meat section came to the door. "Safia, there's a man in a suit to see you," Chantel said. "A white man? Girl, what you got yourself into? You want to make a break for it? You know I got you." "What?" Safia reacted, as surprised as Chantel. "You can stand down, Chantel. Let me see what's going on here." Safia walked out of the break room and to the front of the store. Near aisle 4 was a man in a dark suit. His man in black mold was out of place in this small town. He had top secret written all over him. He might as well have been carrying a black briefcase with a handcuff. Married to an intelligence officer for so long, and having intel folks as patients, she could spot the spook a mile away. "Hi, Mrs. Lincoln. I'm Ian Dunn." The agent stuck out his hand. "I'm with the FBI. I'm wondering if you have a few minutes to talk somewhere." Safia looked at him straight in his face, then lowered her eyes to look at his hand, and then only slowly received it. "Actually, I really don't at the moment," she said. "I'm about to start my second shift." "I'd like to talk about your husband," Agent Dunn said. Safia looked over at the meat section. "Chantel, will you cover for me right quick?" Chantel rushed over. I got you. She leaned over to Safia to whisper, "My cousin Sonny works over at AAA Bail Bonds on Center Street. Now they'll work with you, just ask for Sonny." "Chantel, I'll be right back," Safia said, untying her apron and placing it beneath her register. She turned to Dunn and led him outside. They strolled across the street stiffly, awkwardly, in parallel but on different planes it seemed. On the other side of the road, they approached a park bench. Joggers and dog walkers passing in the background provided sufficient ambient noise for some measure of privacy. They sat down. "Thank you, Mrs. Lincoln. I appreciate your time," Agent Dunn said. He handed over his white business card, plainly designed with the Bureau's logo and Special Agent under his name. "While I'm with the FBI, I've been detailed to CIA headquarters. I know who you are, Mr. Dunn," SAFIA interrupted. "Trust me, you're a part of how our lives have changed this past year. The day you escorted Jabbari out of HQ, that might have been another day at the office for you, but it was an infamous one for us. It destroyed him emotionally and ripped us apart. So believe me, I know who you are." Dunn's eyebrows stayed raised as SAFIA talked. He was listening. "And it's funny, because for months after that day, I would tell Jabbari how I wish I could talk face to face to the people who were part of this, who stripped him from the mission he loved, give him a piece of my mind. But now that you're here in Maysville of all places, now it's different because we haven't heard from him in months. So all I want to know is, where is Jabbari?" "Mrs. Lincoln, I can't give you an answer," Dunn said, choosing his words carefully. "I know you may not be happy with how things have happened with your husband, but life in the intelligence community is not for the faint of heart." The agent paused, as if knowing those words landed coldly. He mulled over his thoughts and deliberated on how to best convey his reason for visiting. "Mrs. Lincoln, are you familiar with bloodhounds?" "Bloodhounds? The dogs?" SAFIA was wondering where he was taking this. "Yes," Agent Dunn responded. "Bloodhounds, as you know, are highly regarded for their strong sense of smell. They get exposed to a scent and can follow it for days and over miles. They are exceptionally good for tracking. So say a bloodhound is given a scent of blood to follow. That hound will track it down as long as it takes to find a match, leaving no stone unturned. And when he finds that match, when he makes the connection between the scent and the person he's been tracking, he has done his job. That's his job, his purpose. It's what he's been bred for. SAFIA, may I call you SAFIA?" Dunn leaned close. "No," she said resoundingly. The agent fell back. "Well, we need bloodhounds to catch those who are trying to hide, who want to deceive us. We can't go by what people say they are. That's why, more than anything, we track their acts. We track their associations, their networks. Bloodhounds do their job. The IC needs bloodhounds. And I, Mrs. Lincoln, am a bloodhound." "Yeah, but a bloodhound needs a master, someone with more intelligence," SAFIA countered. "Anybody can find blood on a man. That's not the same as finding a crime. The IC needs bloodhounds. I'm sorry, but the IC is lacking both intelligence and community. Jabbari trusted the system and the people around him, and look where it got him. What did he do for you all to lose trust in him?" Agent Dunn's countenance remained cold. "Mrs. Lincoln, I don't trust your husband. I don't trust anyone, really." "Then why in the world are you here?" SAFIA asked, her tolerance worn to its last thread. "I'm here because, well, I'm sure you've been following the news about Nigeria," Dunn said. "It's an utter foreign policy disaster. One of the top sources of crude oil to the U.S. totally rejecting U.S. ties, which happened soon after Jabbari, disgruntled from his treatment by the American government, went on that consulting trip. And now he's incognito? Doesn't look good. There's a lot at stake, Mrs. Lincoln. This is bigger than him, bigger than me. Being suspended from the agency was just the beginning. At this point, There's really no way out that is good for him. If he reaches out to you, it's very important that you contact me as soon as possible if you want him to salvage whatever good reputation he may have. You have my card. My personal mobile number is the one with the 202 area code. The moment you hear from him, do call. Agent Dunn didn't wait for a response. He had said what he wanted to say. He got up from the park bench and began walking toward his car. SAFIA looked at his card and then called out, "Dunn, are you a religious man?" The agent stood still, froze a few seconds before turning around, but without answering. "Would you consider yourself a man of faith?" SAFIA prodded. "Mrs. Lincoln, I never discuss my private matters while working." "This is not work to me. This is life. And you came a long way to ask your questions in person. Almost seems like a leap of faith." "Ma'am, I'll say this. If I didn't have faith, it would be painfully difficult to do the work that I do." SAFIA looked at Agent Dunn for a few seconds, nodded, but said nothing else besides goodbye. Dunn drove off as SAFIA sat there, wondering who she could turn to. She had no new information about Jabbari, but surmised that the U.S. government was not done with whatever it started with him a year ago. This roller coaster year just took another dip. She looked at her watch. It was time to get back to work. As she made her way across the street, her phone rang. It was a 202 number that she didn't recognize. Odd, because she had only gotten the phone and number after moving down to North Carolina and hadn't shared it with anyone back in D.C. She had essentially gone dark from her old life. No social media, no communication with the D.C. crowd. Not breaking her stride in the supermarket parking lot, she pressed talk and held the handset to her head. "Hello? This is an important message. The National Credit Organization has discovered your name and social security information in a recent security breach. This may lead to identity theft and could adversely impact your credit score." Dang it! Darn telebots. Weird. I never get calls like that to this phone. The robocall continued. "Please press 1 to be connected to an operator to assist. Press 2 to block future calls from this number." SAFIA pressed 2. The call disconnected. She walked back into the store and waved to Chantel, preparing herself for another 6-hour shift. Meanwhile, at a cafe near the Dulles International Airport, outside Washington, D.C., George EKOI sat at an isolated table, his laptop in front of him, talking on his satellite phone through Bluetooth earbuds. "The contact was made?" George asked. "Very, very good. Now that we have confirmed his wife's whereabouts, we can ensure we have her as our bait. It's important to have 2 operations at the same time, my friend. We have backup if the first operation has any hiccups." George typed some lines into his machine and pressed send. Then he closed his screen and looked up. Reflecting on how far things had progressed, he grinned with sly satisfaction.
Nigeria was becoming more dangerous to operate in, but it was not because of crime like before. The KURMI's surveillance of KANO identified more security presence, state police and military, more checkpoints, and they noticed in the markets a new type of security official. These were not men in uniform, but in plain clothes, who would patrol the stores and peer over the shoulders of customers and merchants, watching to see how people paid for their transactions. If they did not use the Naira, these officials would scold them and threaten them with fines or arrest. But it was more bark than bite. Usually the patrons would apologize, take out some Naira, and act as if they would pay in cash, and then just wait for these financial overseers to leave. There weren't enough watchers to police everyone all the time, so it was mostly an inconvenience. The Mansa protocol was now the dominant form of payment in KANO state, and was growing in other parts of the country. RZQ digital tokens were becoming the de facto currency for the Nigerian man on the street, but not everyone was happy about it. The Kurmis and I were in their living room when a news flash came on the TV. Today, the central bank governor, Dr. Francine CHIKERE, announced a new innovative move by the government to address the payment crisis currently facing all Nigerians. The CBN has unveiled a new form of digital money. It is called the Long Naira. This new version of the Naira will be a digital cash token backed by Nigeria's oil reserves. The screen cut to Dr. CHIKERE speaking at a podium in the CBN press room. And this new improved digital Naira will be accessible to every Nigerian using a mobile phone app. All merchants must accept this new form of payment. A new digital day has arrived, and we must innovate to improve our financial future. All Nigerians must shun any other form of digital payments which may be operating unlawfully. Do not trust these subversive technologies whose origins we know nothing about. The crisis has shown us that Nigeria has enemies, and some of these digital currencies may be forms of international digital sabotage. The Long Naira is our way to counter our enemies and bring us to finance which will serve the people. Madam Governor, what is the technology behind this Long Naira? Asked a reporter in the back of the room. Well, the Long Naira was developed as a joint project with the People's Republic of China, Dr. CHIKERE replied. After we turned away from the colonial powers, we found China to be a more strategic partner for Nigeria's future. Another reporter raised her hand. Madam Governor, how is this Long Naira valuable if the Naira itself has been massively devalued and has little use in foreign exchange markets? Good question, Dr. CHIKERE replied, ready for the inquiry. She checked her notes and then responded. The CBN has made an arrangement with the People's Bank of China to peg the digital token to the Chinese yuan. We are able to do this by setting up an arrangement where this new Naira is a promissory obligation to portions of Nigerian oil reserves. It is a mutually beneficial situation. The Long Naira will be accepted in any market where Chinese currency is accepted. This will open up many trading opportunities for Nigerian businesses, and the Chinese get a special claim on Nigerian oil reserves. Every Naira will represent access to an amount of oil. It is a win-win. The reporters looked at each other. These journalists weren't economic or finance experts, so they accepted her explanation and made sure they copied it exactly as she said it. The screen flashed back to the news anchor. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. The new Long Naira digital payment system will be accessible to Nigerians. It has the advantage of being pegged to the currency of the world's second largest economy. The monetary crisis may soon be ending. The digital payment is available for download immediately. In other news, the government's new drone program for farm livestock surveillance has expanded to every state in the country. Subhanallah, sighed Abdullah as he turned off the TV. This is rubbish. They are mortgaging our resources away. I would not trust this. They will make things worse. The elder KURMI's sentiments mirrored my own. Trusting a digital currency run by the same financial institutions whose payment system was compromised made no sense. But there was something more troubling. The thing about creating a central bank digital currency for an economy, it's like creating the electric wiring for a house. Every user would be like an outlet, all linked to the centralized power. Every transaction connected to the wiring. This meant connecting everything in the economy. It meant acquiring lots of personal data which elements in the Nigerian government would likely exploit. They would have insight into everyone using the Long Naira and could cut people off from it easily if they wanted. The Mansa protocol was set up differently. I had developed it on the Ethereum blockchain system, which was a permissionless, decentralized network, meaning no one person or entity controlled the digital infrastructure. The transaction data were not attached to any identity, so you could see the record of transactions but could not know who was spending by looking at the public blockchain, which essentially was a digital record of the wallet activity. This was what made cryptocurrencies attractive for many criminal actors. I knew this from my years of following illicit threats involving the technology. Many times I would hear blockchain industry insiders arguing that this technology wasn't only for illicit use. Now here I was proving them right. The MAYSVILLE protocol was a practical tool, helping the local people in Nigeria use a more reliable and stable payment method, using a gamification element that made spending for goodness a competitive affair, thanks to the ABUJA algorithm. There were now thousands of users of the protocol, and that certainly was a threat to some at the central bank. But as I thought about it, it seemed also that this long naira might be an opportunity for me to figure out what was happening with the central bank. It would give me something to poke at, to uncover financial intelligence, and to discover who was pulling the economic strings in this turmoil, and perhaps to discover who was behind my attempted kidnapping, to figure out exactly what forces were hunting me. Can you all download the Long Naira app for me to see how it works? All three of the KURMIs looked at their phones and after some swiping and clicking, responded in the affirmative. Do you all mind if I borrow your phones overnight? I want to learn all I can about this Long Naira. I want to compare it to the MAYSVILLE protocol. They handed over their phones and I went to work, burning the midnight oil once again. Studying the Long Naira's back end of programming, I discovered what I feared. The app read and collected data from one's device. Not only the transaction history, but location and possibly photo and video files. This by itself was not unusual. We all give apps permission to read such info, even though this data comprises our most intimate movements and activities. But each unit of Long Naira was code that authenticated your transactions and your identity. It had to be relayed to the ledger, which kept track of all the digital currency in circulation. All this collected data was compressed into a string of files and transmitted in real time to one entity, the Central Bank of Nigeria. It was like having all of those government currency minders in the market now attached to your hip, watching every time you opened up the wallet in your back pocket. It was the biggest construction of technological surveillance I had ever seen. Whereas the MAYSVILLE protocol read information on your device and fed into its algorithm, that information did not transmit outside of your possession, not to me or anyone. The MAYSVILLE protocol's artificial intelligence was self-contained, reading and calculating in an encrypted environment managed by the user. The Long Naira payment system was offering up your entire life to Nigeria's central bank. I wondered, who is the ultimate acquirer of this information? I doubted it only went to the financial authorities. This Long Naira wasn't just about currency. It was more about the data. In the morning, I sat with the KURMI family after dawn prayer. I had a key message for them. So here's my advice. Don't use the Long Naira app, I told them. Don't touch the digital money they've airdropped into your wallets. Delete it. Continue to use the MAYSVILLE protocol and transact in RZQ. The Long Naira is the ultimate surveillance tool, and my spidey sense tells me that all this data, all the power it could provide to whoever holds it, is going to be weaponized. The personal information and access it would acquire is unprecedented. We are used to digital surveillance by now, HIDAYAH said. And with all the personal data attached to our devices, doesn't every nation deal with this? Even in America, the government has collected data on its citizens. Well, you're right that now almost everyone has a digital footprint, I said. And those footprints can sometimes get acquired and investigated by government agencies. It's the nature of our technological existence. But how far it goes to compromise your privacy depends on the environment. A healthy democracy with rule of law should hinder that government outreach. But without an accountable political system, an independent judiciary, free press, and a culture that values liberty, a pure surveillance state is the logical conclusion of a rising digital era. Government surveillance, HIDAYAH, is a spectrum. Nigeria seems to be moving to the wrong end of it with this long naira. As with so many things, we are moving to the wrong end, Hidayah added. But I am still optimistic. We have been through so much in our family and in Nigeria, but we keep pressing on. Corruption and abuse cannot live forever. That's the spirit, my daughter, Abdullah said, hugging her. Soon it was time for school. The KURMI crew filed out into Abdullah's car for the morning commute. I went back up to my room and switched on the 3 screens. I settled in, poured some sorrel punch, and leaned back to read one of the Nigerian dailies as the KURMIs drove off. All was quiet. I noticed an article about an upcoming banking conference happening in Singapore, the same location where Solomon Oluchi, Inspector Oyo's previous boss, died mysteriously over a year prior. I thought about how, around the time of Oluchi's death, I was driving home from the agency headquarters, in shock from the accusations, disoriented. Despite the passage of time, I still felt I was spinning, in the midst of a hurricane of circumstances that my analytic skills could not keep up with, too many dots to connect. The CIA security office's suspicions due to my incidental associations with Montel Sharif, that cryptic message hidden in my office belongings about Surah al-Muftafithin, the defrauders, the perplexing reference about my name being in prison, George EKOI and the consulting gig for the central bank, the attack by the goons and SUVs, and George left for dead now being cast as a national hero by the Nigerian government and press, and the Naira's collapse due to the banking system's compromise by financial cyber sabotage, and me being cast as an enemy to the Nigerian state and hunted by security forces, all while Nigeria broke off relations with the United States. This was a year of my life like no other, and deep in the rabbit hole of self-reflection, I got pulled out as Abdullah's voice poked the silence. His voice emanated from the audio feed, and it was heavy.
La ilaha illallah Muhammadan Rasulullah,
he said, stopping the car, and then all 3 screens panned to the right, all focusing on 2 figures with clubs entering what looked like a warehouse. I saw a sign. It read, Khalifa Agricultural Processing Warehouse. I peered closer to one of the monitors. At the front of the steps, a man was stooped over with his hands holding his head. He was bleeding. What is it? I asked.
These men just hit this other man in front of the farm processing facility. The same one we used to use for our grain.
A robbery? I asked.
Maybe. I'm not sure.
Abdullah's video, monitor 2, showed him looking at the windshield again. The road was clear. He panned back to the warehouse. Inside, it showed what looked like to be a facility worker, a woman with her hands raised as 2 men, threatening her with clubs, motioned her back. Hadi and Hidayah's monitors were also focused on the scene. Abdullah's screen moved back to the left, viewing the road still open and clear for them to proceed. Then his screen panned back to the warehouse.
Hadi, come with me inside.
Abdullah's screen turned back to Hidayah in the back seat.
My dear, stay here. Watch out for us from here. Yes, Baba,
Hidayah replied. Abdullah, are you sure about this? I said. This looks a bit hairy. Maybe you should call... I paused, realizing what the past few months had taught me. Abdullah reminded me.
Jabbari, there is no one to call for help in Nigeria. It's up to us.
There was nothing I could say to counter that argument, but I wished at the time that I was with them and not immobilized in the compound room, sheltered from what was before them. The point of view of screens 1 and 2 both showed the vantage point of KURMI, father and son, exiting out of the car, saying nothing. Abdullah popped his trunk and I could see him opening a large metallic box with rusty old farming tools, including cutting devices. He grabbed 2 machetes and handed one to Hadi. They approached the warehouse. As they got closer, I could see more of the activity inside. 2 male assailants smashed their clubs at containers in the warehouse. The woman screamed. Abdullah and Hadi approached the door. Screen 2, Abdullah's view, leaning down on the injured man. Blood streamed along his forehead. Abdullah asked if he was okay. The man nodded, but seemed too pained to move much. He stayed hunched over. Abdullah and Hadi's video feeds turned, focusing on the inside of the warehouse, each of them holding their machete. As they entered the doorway, I saw that it was not 2 men as aggressors, but 4, the 2 with the clubs, and then a larger, older man, and besides him, a younger man with an AK-47. The KURMI men slowed a bit, but still inched closer. The older aggressor shouted some threats at the woman, but I couldn't make out the words. But then I recognized his face. It was General El-SAYF, the agriculture official from HIDAYAH's Science Award ceremony. Abdullah and Hadi were behind a corner, hidden from the folks inside.
You all have been warned many times that you must use the Naira, always.
The intimidating general snarled at the woman.
This facility and all its contents are being taken over by the state. No Naira, no peace.
The young man with the AK said, smiling, chuckling between his teeth.
You have no right,
Screamed the woman.
I have every right.
General El-SAYF responded.
And we can do it one of 3 ways. A, B, or C. A, the easy way. You just leave now, quickly. B, you leave slowly, but my friends will give you the beating we gave your husband outside. Option C, just keep talking, trying to explain to me why I am wrong. And my other friend here, holding what I call the last word, he will show you why I am right. Choose wisely, eh?
The man with the AK lifted his weapon, taking aim at the woman. She closed her eyes and trembled, holding her breath, as if preparing to meet her maker.
Stop it now!
Abdullah ordered. His view came from behind a hallway corner into the facility's main production room, so the woman and the armed men could see him. Hadi's screen moved in that direction.
This is not right. You cannot get away with this.
Abdullah said. The men with clubs stepped up in front of Abdullah and Hadi, holding up their weapons in a ready-to-swing stance, but waiting for orders to do so. I looked at one of the clubmen. He was not a grown man, but a teenager, Hadi's age. He looked familiar. I looked at my laptop and quickly searched for a video file from weeks back. I pulled up footage from in front of the internet cafe. It was one of the Lucky Time boys, the beggar. He was wearing the same ripped red shirt. General El-SAYF laughed, unfrazzled, seemingly amused.
What are you here to do? You may think that you have all the power to do this, but you don't have the right. The woman is correct. There is a constitution. We are supposed to be a nation of laws and due process.
I was concerned that things were escalating to a point of no return, and I started to tell Abdullah in his ear to rethink his moves. But just then I noticed movement in screen 3, Hidayah's. She got out of the car. The man with a bloodied forehead had collapsed on the warehouse steps. She ran to him, leaned over his face. She whispered,
You're still breathing. Hold on, you are losing blood. Let me make a bandage.
I heard a strip of cloth and then could see her bandaging his scalp. The man's eyes were half open as he went in and out of consciousness. Then, inside, there was movement in the warehouse. The warehouse woman shouted to the general.
You should be ashamed.
The general, with a look of impatience, turned to the man with the AK.
Show her option C now.
The gunman raised his barrel up and lined his eyes with the sights on the muzzle. Just then, screen 1, Hadi's view rushed ahead, machete held high, pushing past the men with clubs. Their wooden weapons both landed on his body outside of the camera's view. But he broke through, and with his hand clutching the machete, lunged at the gunman, who swerved in Hadi's direction and fired. Screen 1 went to static. Abdullah screamed. Hadi fell. Screen 2 panned down to Hadi's body, face down. Blood splattered around on his head, his machete thrown on the ground a few feet from his hand. Hadi's glasses were smashed apart. Then Abdullah's video view panned, lunging at the gunman. Abdullah's machete hit the gun, smacking it down but not loosing it from the man's grip. The gunman was stunned, but he raised up, fired off balance, and missed Abdullah. The sounds of whirring bullets echoed in the audio feed. The general took several steps back, giving him room if Abdullah wasn't stopped. The young men with clubs came to the side of the screen, but they were wary, knowing that although rock beat scissors, machete beat club. The warehouse woman, seeing the general's goons distracted, ran towards the door. I could see Hidayah's screen view now capturing the whole scene from inside the doorway. The woman ran past her to the outside, but Hidayah's camera stayed forward. I looked at Abdullah's screen. The gunman had stumbled a bit and was leaning on a container but still held his weapon. Abdullah's machete was raised within striking distance. He swung down and the gunman fired. Hidayah screamed. Abdullah's screen went to static. "Hidayah, get out now! Get back to the car!" I urged. But she ran straight to her father, who was lying on his back, bloodied, limp. Hidayah wept. I couldn't see much on the screen except part of her father's shoulders as she held him. But then I saw 2 feet step closer at the bottom of the screen. Her camera tilted up. General El-SAYF was looking straight into her face.
Welcome to the party.
The general turned to the gunman.
Get her. This is our real prize.
The gunman grabbed Hidayah on her side. She tried to run, but was grabbed on the other side by the panhandling Lucky Time boy with the red shirt.
Out the back, now!
General El-SAYF ordered. I could tell Hidayah was being lifted off of the ground by the goons, who carried her out through an office and then to a back door. Her camera showed twisting and turning. Outside, a white sedan with darkly tinted windows waited. She moved to it head first. Monitor 3 was all I had, and now my only view was the inside of the car, the back seat. Hidayah tried to shake herself free, but to no avail. I heard the stripping sound of duct tape. Her voice was muffled. Then, the gunman placed some sort of covering on her head. The screen was blocked by dark fabric. "All right, stay calm, Hidayah," I told her in her ear. "Stay with me. Let me listen to what's going on so I can come find you." She couldn't verbally respond, but I could hear her breath, intense but slowing. The screen stayed obscured in black, but I heard multiple car doors opening and closing, the sound of a window rolling down. Then voices, slightly muted, spoke. I could make out the general's words.
Find their car. You know what to do. No naira, no peace. No naira, no peace.
2 voices responded in unison. The car engine started, then tires crunching over gravel.
Did you check to make sure she had no weapons?
General El-SAYF asked.
We would have felt a weapon when we carried her.
The voice of the gunman responded.
Check her. This is a clever one. Use the metal detector.
Then, still seeing only black on the screen, I heard a bag unzip, then ruffling. An electric device powered on, a test beep, and then...
Stay still, girl. Let me see if you have knives hidden or scissors or something.
There was ruffling around, and then a loud beep.
It is her phone.
The window rolled down. A second later, it rolled back up. He continued scanning, it seemed. Then, another beep. All of a sudden, the hood came off. The gunman grabbed Hidayah's scarf, pulled it up off of her head, and held it in his hands on his lap. He waved the wand directly in front of the camera. Another loud beep. The video feed turned upside down. I heard the car window roll down again. The view briefly caught the gunman with his arm stretching to the camera. He was holding up the scarf outside. His other arm restrained Hidayah, still back in the seat. He heaved. The video captured spinning, flashing specks of sky and road, then black asphalt. Vehicle traffic. A car in the distance got bigger on the screen. I stared intently. A huge tire filled the screen. A quick flash. The display turned to static. I stared at all 3 monitors, each with no video and no audio, processing what had just happened. I realized that I needed to act. I had no idea where they were taking Hidayah, but my mission to escape KANO had now shifted. I'd have to help her. It was time to get operational, onto the streets and track her whereabouts. I planned to head to the agricultural facility. I couldn't afford to take much except my handwritten notes where I kept details about the Mansa protocol. My laptop data was encrypted. I felt pretty secure that without my own password, no one could retrieve anything from it. I decided to leave on foot and just carry bare essentials. My backpack, a few clothes, some books, a prayer rug. I rushed downstairs, moving like in the panic of a war zone raid. In the living room, near the front door, I rifled through the basket of bartered items from months ago. I thought about survival. I selected a few things, dropped them into my bag, opened up the door, stepped out, and shut it behind me. I was venturing into the unknown. But as I walked to the front gate, I saw something that I knew. It was Abdullah's car, coming in the distance. Speeding, dirt kicking up behind its tracks. 2 figures sat in the front. I studied it for a few moments, thinking that just maybe what I saw on those video screens had deceived me. Maybe Hadi and Abdullah were okay. But then I saw the 2 people in Abdullah's car were the ones with the clubs at the warehouse. I dashed behind the compound toward the sorghum field. The car sped up, close to the gate. They saw me, and the car swerved right along the side of the compound, turning the corner following me, revving its engine fast. I sprinted further. Ahead of me was the vast field full of orange sorghum stalks. The car got closer. I ran and jumped over a ditch a few yards from the field. I cleared it and ran into the sorghum. The car braked to avoid the ditch but couldn't stop in time. The front part dropped, crashing in the dirt and raising the back end of the car, wheels spinning off the ground. I crawled low into the sorghum field, looking back to see if they were finished. They weren't. The 2 young men got out of the front seats. They were holding machetes, not clubs. Then the back doors opened. 3 more young guys got out. They had clubs. Judging by their ragged, depraved look, they were more Lucky Time boys. The one with the red shirt advanced first, holding out the machete and scanning the field for my movement. "American," he called, but he couldn't see me sliding through the colorful brush. "No naira, no peace," he taunted, and he signaled to the others to spread around the field. They stepped into the sorghum grass, trying to encircle me. I was prone. I dragged deeper into the field, but the one in red saw the top of the stalks move, revealing my position. He charged in my direction, slashing stalks in front of me. Face down in the dirt, I grabbed a rock and threw it in the opposite direction near the other one with a machete. It missed him, but the sound of its landing caught his attention. "He's over there, this way," the second machete one said, pulling the 4 others in the wrong direction. I kept maneuvering, watching them like a game of Marco Polo in the patch of sorghum. This went on for several minutes, hiding and seeking, until they stopped encircling. They were conferring about something. No movement. I listened, hearing only my own breath. They were further away, or perhaps totally outside the field. I crouched down in the center of the stalks, and then listened, waiting. Then 2 of my senses were triggered. First it was sound. I heard liquid pouring in the distance, tens of yards away, but flowing in all directions. The next sense was smell, gasoline. Their intention was clear. A blaze started around the edges of the field. It grew fast, eating the stalks. Waves of heat tapped my skin. Soon, I could barely see the stalks. Smoke filled the field. I started coughing. I had to solve that problem. I pulled open the backpack and grabbed a gas mask, fastened it on. But that did nothing against the heat. My clothes were getting warmer, my skin itching. The flames stretched higher. Breathing through the gas mask, I oriented myself, looking around for an escape. I glanced at the top of the burning stalks and noticed the smoke flowing in a westerly direction. Sometimes it's not the fire, but the smoke, I remembered Abdullah saying weeks ago. With the wind coming from the east, I knew that indicated the direction where the flames would be strongest. I had to get out before the fire consumed every sorghum stalk and me in the process. I scanned, then assessed the clearest path. turned in that direction and barreled forward, watching the sky smoke, pointing where the flames had the most power. I shifted accordingly, avoiding pockets of heat burst, zigzagging between stalks, transforming from bright orange to black. Sparks landed on my backpack, so I took it off and kept running faster. More burning stalks fell in my path. I jumped, zigging, zagging, until I saw a clearing, the edge of the field. I popped out. The air cooled. I took off the gas mask. But then a club popped the side of my face, and a foot tripped me up under my calves. I landed flat on my back, dazed. I could make out two youths standing above me, one in the red shirt with a machete. He raised it above his head. His arm muscles flexed and he tightened his face, readying to chop down on my neck. He smiled. "No naira, no peace." Then someone whistled. "Stop! Put it down!" The words came from one of the other Lucky Time boys. 20 yards away, near the car, he was pressing a cell phone against his ear. "Change of plans! Don't do it! No slicing today!" He hung up the phone and kept it in his hand. The red-shirted one lowered his weapon. The one with the phone walked over. "Keep him down! Hold him down!" The others followed his command, restraining me as he approached. He was maybe a little bit older than the others. "Nice gas mask, but I have some gas for you." He pulled out a satchel with a green respirator mask attached to a tube. I struggled, but couldn't free myself as he forced it over my nose and mouth. I tried not to breathe, but struggling could only do so for a minute. I gave in and inhaled. There was no odor, but I felt a tingle in my nose, and then my lungs. My heart started racing. My vision got cloudy. Sounds were muffled. My limbs fell limp. A cloud enveloped me in my vision, but also by the smoke surrounding my body. Still on my back, I could see only parts of the sky. I noticed a drone whirring. It was still. Then it retreated away from the smoke. I could hear voices faintly. The one with the phone said, "Take him to the airport." Then I blacked out. They said he was done for. They said he was on the run for some crime. They said he committed. They said he did it. They said he was persona non grata. They said he was out yonder, beyond the call of duty. They said it was dishonor. They said it was to avoid the trauma. They said that the best in their midst was a glitch, gorilla unglued. They said a switch fell through the cracks, so they pulled it. They said it was the facts. They said it was the check that bounced back. They said it was time. He said it was a line. They said it was crosswords. They said the crossroads were fine. He said the railroads make tracks on his back. He raised up out of dodge his spine. They said he was in the wind. They said it was a cloud. They said the alibi was thin. They said pay him no mind. They said it's a chess game and the one with the most pawns wins. They said it was checkmate. They said it was ixnay. They said it was clean. He said it was a scheme. He said it was murder. They said it was suicide, open shut case. He saw 187007 cause he knew how numbers moved from 313 to MIT. They said it was like P-Rock. They said it was hard knocks. He said it was all talk. They said the letters of covert in action, but he read CYA. They said it was no play. He said no kidding. The earth was spinning and he wound up back on stage. They said it was intermission. He said it was a third act. He said it's a new mission. He said the play writes itself in intelligence. The spy game is aimed on attrition. Tunnel vision, he said he was thinking the locomotive light was blinking. He'll either get run over, forgotten, or they'll remember the name, Jabbari Lincoln. The Jabbari Lincoln Files, Season 1, The Mansa Protocol. The Jabbari Lincoln Files is a Sine Curve Studios production. Story written and narrated by Yahya Jatta Fanusi, who also produced the sound design. The Deputy Chief of Ops is narrated by Farida Abdul-Tawwab Brown. The Jabbari Lincoln cover art designed by Marilyn Wu and Jasmine Manning. Sine Curve Studios would like to thank the following for constructive story feedback: Chandra Caldwell, Ross Tierney, James Brown, Farida Abdul-Tawwab Brown, Justin Vitfeld Matthews, Andrea Usain, Jamila Kaleri, Tam Hussein, Faisal Abdurrahman, Imam Salim Mutman, the Babatunde Bays. For story writing consultation, Cameron Pasha, Sahir Vora. For banking and crypto consultation, Linda Jang. For media strategy, Styliz Akira's The Annie Agency, Scott Guerrero and Kathleen Chen. Intellectual property consultation by PatentInsider.co. Audio feedback, The Good Kind, by Indar. Watch for a new episode next Thursday and visit Jabbari Lincoln's blog at jabbarilincoln.com. Peace.